running out of room for how many letters we can do. Okay, there you go. All right, well, hopefully he gets his tech figured out soon. We can just start. So my name is Joe Dierte, and I will be helping rate this, representing Saga. We have the pleasure of bringing together a bunch of people working in Web3 for making GameFi protocols. And they're here to showcase and discuss how crypto can meet the gaming performance and usability requirements of gamers across the world. And we will be starting with a short introduction from each team and a quick overview of the project they're building. So we will start with Rebecca, who's representing Saga. Let's see.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by on a Thursday afternoon out here in California, where I am. But wherever you are in the world, thanks so much for stopping by. As Joe mentioned, we're part of the Saga team. Saga is a protocol for launching the next 1,000 chains in the multiverse. That's our tagline. And what we mean by multiverse here is the multi-chain verse. So our vision is that, particularly for gaming and entertainment applications on Web3, they're going to need their own dedicated block space in order to the performance requirements as well as the economic requirements of their developers and end users. And we would love to provide the infrastructure for that. So we wanted to convene some of our closest friends in gaming today to talk about what Web3 gaming is all about. So we hear a lot about it. It is a very hot space at the moment, but what does it actually entail? Is it simply adding NFTs to games that otherwise look and feel just like games normally do? Or is the fact that we now have not just NFTs, but also tokens involved and collective ownership of this game? Does that allow for new models? Does that allow for new gaming possibilities, new ways of playing games, etc.? So wanted to gather everyone for what I'm sure will be a really great discussion today. And afterwards, there are probably many people in the audience who are building games or interested in gaming or interested in Web3 generally. So more than happy to questions at the very end. But with that, let me hand it over to some of our co-hosts today. So seeing on my screen, Phantasia. Dan, do you want to let everyone know what Phantasia is and how you guys have been building the platform so far?
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate Saga for organizing this. I'm looking forward to Debates are always fun, especially with a group of guests like this. So without spending too much more time, I'll dive into Phantasia. So Phantasia Sports is currently live. We're on Solana, and our mission is to build the fantasy sports platform for Web3, meaning we currently offer daily fantasy sports, but we are pioneering our inaugural fantasy season-long league. And blockchain really empowers us to do quite a bit of things. Traditionally, people play fantasy sports with their friends, coworkers, or others for season-long leagues, and a lot of people like to put money on this, and that has traditionally been unorganized or organized through a commissioner, which holds all the funds in their Venmo, bank account, in a hat, whatever it may be it. But smart contracts really allow people to hold that in a way that no one has custody, and that oracles can keep it safe in there, and then at the end of the season, divide those funds. So that's just one use case of what we're building for, but we also have a daily fantasy sports platform. This is analogous to the Web2 version of DraftKings or FanDuel, and instead of playing against the house and having crazy rake fees, which in the world of fantasy sports means how much the house gets to keep, it's all peer-to-peer, and the protocol takes a small transaction fee. So that really allows the users to win more and play against each other inside of the house, making it a lot friendlier of a game, and that's what the users who are playing fantasy sports want to do. On top of that, customization of digital identities is a huge thing in fantasy sports. We've seen it work really well for applications like Sleeper, which is one of the leading fantasy sports applications in the US. And at Phantasia, we power that through NFTs. We have our own NFT marketplace. Users are able to buy these NFTs. Some have in-game utility, for example, customizing your rosters. Fantasy sports is a skill-based game, so people do a lot of analytics and research on how to build their teams. We power with some of our NFTs access to roster building technology that we built in-house and that's proprietary to us. So a lot of our users like to do that and build a roster in one click, and from there customize it further. And this digital identity called a fan card follows these users around in-game. They can customize it. It's on the leaderboards, in-game chat when they're talking smack against their friends or other competitors, which is really fun for them. And the other benefits of building on the blockchain is instant payouts. Usually when you're competing in fantasy sports, for other Web2 platforms, you might get paid out in a couple of days, and then from there it takes a week or two to withdraw to a PayPal or bank account. But with this, your funds are instantly given to your wallet. So just huge benefits all around. And currently where we're at with Phantasia, as I mentioned, we are live with NFL, NBA, MLB, and English Premier League, EPL for daily fantasy sports at our building, which we're just announcing a season-long fantasy sports for football. And we're really excited about that because in North America, there's 60 million people who play fantasy football every year. So huge market, and no one else is really doing fantasy sports in Web3, at least not how we're doing it. So excited to be at the forefront of fantasy sports and sports in Web3 as well. That's a quick overview. I'm happy to dive in more, but I won't take up too much time and let some other speakers give a quick blurb about their protocols as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've definitely had a fantasy football commissioner that's hard to get payouts from at the end. So having a smart contract handling that instead of my friend sounds great. So yeah, I'd love to move on to Lex, and he can talk about Passage.
Yeah, absolutely. So Passage is basically trying to take the best of the Web 2 space and the Web 3 space. We're trying to bring kind of the power of Unreal Engine virtual experiences and really the next generation of kind of like the high end of Web 2 virtual experiences, and bring that to your average consumer and your average crypto person as well, right? Because for one, these kind of immersive experiences, the more we have specialized hardware, specialized software, you got to have dedicated hardware apps and things like that. And we're doing something really unique where we take these rich, immersive 3D experiences, but we're powering the experience not by like your own hardware, but by hardware that's running on cloud computing, right? So we're specifically working with Akash Network, which is a decentralized cloud compute provider on Cosmos. And this lets us, in kind of a decentralized way, provide compute to run these virtual worlds and stream it into the browser, right? So you're hopping into a AAA game, but you're doing it from a web browser on your desktop, your phone, an old laptop. And it really allows us to kind of bridge the gap between the, unfortunately, typically terrible experience of Web3 by creating an experience that incentivizes adopt, right? It's bringing this kind of like immersive next-gen Web3 experience to people who don't want to have to dig deep to figure out how they're going to, for one, if they have the right hardware, if they've got the right software, and being able to get into kind of like this new frontier of virtual and virtual ownership. We're kind of bridging the gap basically by pushing the stuff, streaming into the browser, and allowing people to have these experiences in a way that's seamless and doesn't have kind of the typical learning curve of the Web3 space.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a great explanation. So for the last introduction, we can go to Michael with C2X.
Hey guys, nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Great. Yeah, to explain a little bit about C2X, I have to go kind of beyond that and explain Come to Us. And basically, Come to Us is one of the big mobile gaming companies out in Korea, and we've been doing mobile games since 1998, starting from the feature phones. When the App Store came around, our business really took off, and we have a hit title called Summoner's War, and that's been in service for 8 years now. We've had a series since 1998 where we've made huge pivots because of where we saw the market move towards, and this is exactly the next pivot that we've done after of course free to play. Blockchain, we believe, is the next big thing that's going to happen and really going to take over. And this was basically the genesis of how C2X was formed. And so our whole company, over 2,000 people, is now pivoted to Web3 and committed to Web3, and all of our games are going to be Web3 now. And we've created C2X as our blockchain gaming platform, where we're making it very easy for Web2 game developers, game providers to really focus on their games and not worry about the blockchain aspect of things, because it is quite difficult to go through all the legal regulation stuff and the issuing of the tokens and whatnot. And yeah, and so we want the game developers to be able to focus on the game and not really have to worry about everything else. And our mission is to really have the mass market adopt blockchain technology, and yeah, that's what we're set out to do.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. So now that we got the introductions from everyone, I just figured I would start with a question. I'd ask each team what they think of this question, and we'll just go through it. So we can start with Rebecca, possibly. What does crypto bring to digital economies, and how will this change the future of gaming? Really love to hear your 2 cents on what Web3 brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So not to give anyone homework, but Saga recently put out a blog post on our Medium that talks about GameFi and what are the different gaming business models, and the business models feed directly into your experience of playing the game. So way back in the day, with the advent of gaming, it was pay to play. So you had to pay for the game in order to actually have access to it. So these are the Nintendo, Atari games that we all love from, dating myself, but we all love from our childhoods. And that was the model for a while. And then when internet came along and the free to pay to play, I think that's what it's called. Basically, your typical game where you're now going online to play this game. It is played for free, but if you want certain tools, if you want to advance to certain rounds, if you want all these other bells and whistles to enhance your gaming experience, you have to pay for that. And that's the majority of Web 2 game business models. And that's an experience that a lot of gamers have gotten accustomed to. But having said that, gaming has become much bigger than that. And sometimes when these microtransactions pop up all the time, the game starts to feel less appealing or even exploitative in some cases. So what Web3 does is it solves the second problem to a certain extent, which is, hey, this game is actually owned by this community. And the community decides not only, okay, these are the gaming features that we really love, or, this is a sort of gaming community that we'd like to have with a certain culture, but also in terms of the business model, do we want NFTs? Do we want to charge for these in-game assets? If we want to charge for these in-game assets, how are those assets going to be tradable? How are people going to be able to earn money off of that? Is this a place for earning money? But it's all going back to the community, and it empowers the natural communities that form around these really great games. So that's what Web3 really does. And we've just covered the economic aspect for now, but let's talk about how that bleeds into the entertainment aspect of it. So how does the fact that the community is owning the game and using tokens to cement that ownership, to govern the future features of the game or how the game is run, how does that feed back into the actual gaming experience? So I think that the aspiration is that the game is much reflective of what the community actually wants to play. Because you have so much more direct input. You're not having to please like an Activision Blizzard, for instance, or Electronic Arts, or other huge gaming studios as to what the features of this game are going to be. And the more impassioned the community gets, the more invested they feel in a particular game, the more you're going to get talent that is going to enhance the gaming features that everyone will be able to enjoy as gamers. So it's a really exciting space, opens a ton of doors. I think the sense right now is, even though gaming it's such a hot new sector in Web3, it's very early. Because I think you have a lot of gaming studios who have been in Web 2 for a long time and are just in the business of building great games. And they see the Web 3 opportunity as primarily an economic opportunity for the time being, and they want to take advantage of that. So a lot of them are trying to see, okay, well, how do we get plugged into Web 3? How do we have a token component to our game? And that's sort of where the thinking is at the moment. But in terms of thinking much more expansively and how do we really get the community engaged? How do we really change gaming? How do we go from something that is either a free to pay to play, where you're just doing microtransactions, but the game itself is pretty simple, to these big storyboard games that feel like very immersive films, to something that is Web3 and very community minded? I mean, there's a whole spectrum where I think game studios, once you add in this new dimension of Web3, it has the potential to really change what they do. So it's an incredibly exciting time. Lots of different projects like the ones that our co-hosts are building, contributing to this revolution. And I'd love to hear what they have to say about this as well, because they're living and breathing it as people who build these games that we all love. So I'd love to hand it off to somebody else.
Yeah, I can just restate the question one more time. But what does crypto bring to digital economies, and how will it change the future of gaming? So either Lex, Phantasia, C2X.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
I mean that's it. It's ownership. I mean, in a nutshell, like it's simple, right? It's a total paradigm shift, and this dictates the way that people get into this space. For one, because you truly own an asset, it's a little bit more difficult than logging in to an app, right, with Facebook, because there's too many layers there where ownership is taken from you, right? So we've taken out some of the simplicity of the process because this is a raw asset you really do own, and so it's got to be somewhere, it's got to live somewhere that is that you have real sovereignty over, which is not the App Store, unfortunately. So many things throughout that process are not transparent, right? And that's another necessity of ownership is transparency, right? If you actually own part of this game economy or an asset within this ecosystem, then you have to know something about what that means, right? And so transparency on the blockchain is another kind of like fundamental feature of Web3 and just the necessity of having real ownership. And basically everything else about Web3 is just whether or not you're being consistent with that base principle of ownership, right? And are you centralizing elements of your ecosystem, and to what end, right? Like, yeah, we're gonna have to make compromises along the way. But unfortunately, a lot of the companies with reputable games that have actually gotten into Web3 are often doing so in a way that's not authentic and not like genuine, because they're seeking to maintain the control that they've had over the ecosystem while kind of having this illusion of Web3 technology, right? It's like, oh well, it's on the blockchain, but this is a centralized blockchain where we haven't created the bridge or the ability to move your liquidity in a way that's actually in your that's actually free. Michael, I'd be super curious just from your perspective too. I mean, because of these kind of inherent difficulties of creating ownership, I mean, what you're talking about with your ecosystem, I mean, it's totally essential, right? Because we need to be able to kind of like handhold people into this environment, and it's not just the users, right? I mean, from the things that we're building at Passage, like I'm sure we've seen a lot of the same problems firsthand, where we're trying to kind of countercultural to what's going on in traditional gaming, create an opportunity for true ownership. But that means first getting creators like game developers on board with what we're building. I mean, what does that look like for you trying to get people into the space?
Yeah. Like first and foremost, like definitely the ownership part I think resonates with everyone. Like, there's a countless amount of games where like people love, but ultimately had to be serviced down, and like what happens to all the items or assets that you own in the game, right? Like it just goes down to the service. Exactly. And so this Web3 gaming definitely changes that aspect of it. Now in regards to your question on just like game developers and just the spirit of Web3 and blockchain gaming in general, like from our perspective, like as decentralized like the conversation is on Web3 and Web3 gaming, right now with like C2X, we want to make it a decentralized system, but there needs to be some checks and balances in place, right? Because we don't want bad actors to come in and create bad poor experiences basically. And so on the game developer side, we're seeing tremendous interest, and a lot of the like if you go to Korea, like all the big players in Korea, you've heard the releases from Krafton, Netmarble. WeMade was the one who started it, and then it was WeMade first, and then us come to us, which launched C2X. But basically, they're all going in this direction, because they see this is truly the future, and other game developers and game creators are seeing this as well, but they're kind of scared to take that leap because of all of the regulations, whatnot, and the conversation regarding the NFTs, which mostly are unfounded. Like it depends, right? It's mostly unfounded, but what we personally C2X have been noticing is that there's immense interest, but these developers have no idea how to like take that next step, because it's so hard to like create an entity, issue a token, go through all the legal hurdles, and so like that in itself already is such a it's like they want to go in, but they just don't know how. And so that's why we actually created C2X, and C2X originally was going to be our own like it was going to be our own closed ecosystem. But as more and more we were out there talking to other developers, we realized that there was this need, that there was this empty spot that people wanted to contribute, but just had no means, because not all the companies out there, not all the game developers out there are part of 1,000 people teams, right? There are so many 50 people, 100 people that are focused on just a single title. And if you're focused on a single title, or maybe two titles, you can't really divert enough resources to go that whole legal route of creating your own entity, all that other steps that you need to do to become a Web3 company. And so
if you're not even in the community yet, right? Like if you're not part of
Right,
this,
right,
this atmosphere,
exactly,
how do you know where
exactly.
to start? I mean,
Right.
I'll tell you, we just went through this journey with the passage token, and we're almost out, light at the end of the tunnel. But it's one of those things where, I mean, it really is unprecedented right now. Like there is no, it's tough because you look around and I see a bunch of really successful projects in the Terra ecosystem, Solana, Cosmos, and I know the founders are operating in the US, but then I'm like, but there still isn't a really good standard or framework for doing this, right? And so like you're absolutely right. There's a huge demand for people who are going to kind of be like who are again on both sides of things. The teams that are going to guide new consumers into the space, right, and eliminate barriers and kind of like tread that path,
Right.
and really create the opportunity for adoption in the mainstream. But then also the teams that are going to guide new teams into the space, right? And
Right.
it's a difficult
Right.
chicken or the egg problem because I'm sure you've seen this too with the teams that you're working with, that it's tough because what do? The team has to be on board, but their audience has to be on board first, so there's an
Exactly.
opportunity for
Exactly.
profit for them. And in the meantime, we're just kind of like cannibalizing this our existing crypto audience, right, and recycling the same
Right.
markets over and over and over again.
So that's another thing that what we're actually trying to kind of shift is the complete like on-chain gaming experience right now. You know, the if you think about the DAU of the games that are out there that are considered purely Web3 games, and it's in the hundreds of thousands, versus you compare games in the Web2 sense, you have millions, right? And that's we're trying to
Right.
bring the masses onto the blockchain, and the way we're doing that is we're actually creating free to play and earn games. And so what we mean by that is all of our games, we're going to launch 10 games this year. We've already launched 2. All of our games, they're going to be available on the App Store and Google Play Store, and people are not going to notice that they're Web3 games until they get to a certain level, and they
Right.
hit a certain level, and then they'll start accumulating this new currency in the game, and the only way that they'll be able to claim it is to claim it through a wallet that they'll have to download. And so, like, first of all, the people who get to that level are already engaged to a point where, like, if they get
Right.
to that level, then why not try to claim this thing that they're accruing, right? And secondly, it's also like a incentive for them to continue playing, like, and it's just a virtuous cycle, at least right now, because all of that, before, the user acquisition cost was so high. Right now it's so hard to make a Web2 game successful. It's
Yeah.
just plain and simple. On the App Store, it's just so hard because there's so many games out there. But right now, and especially when you make the profit, then you spend it right back on user acquisition. Versus now, you when you collect, you can now spend on the community, and that's actually happening. I do want to say though that we're still so early, and we're not. I'm not saying that we have all the answers. We by no means do we have all the answers, but we're learning, and at least, like, we'll be trying out so many different things that we'll be able to learn quickly and adapt to, like, what happens and what's happening within the space. And so that's what I'm actually really
Yeah.
excited about, is to find out the insights gathered from the games that we're launching this year.
No, that's huge, and I think especially your experience in the Web2 space. I mean, that's so important. I mean, this is what we need: is we need people to kind of lead by example, right? People to show kind of like the path. Our team's background is primarily in like mainstream media and entertainment, and so like for us, it's all about trying to bring creators into the Web3 space who are already in the Web2 space, right? And I say that broadly, like people who are content creators who are building entertainment media, but have sold and been successful and with a mainstream audience, right? Because we don't want this kind of like second rate, like, well, there's Web2 games and then there's Web3 games, right? It's like, no, we just want the best games that offer Web3 features.
Right.
And so it's really important that teams like
Right.
yours that have that background are kind of shining a light and kind of giving an opportunity to bring people to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because, like, that's exactly the spirit that we're trying to work towards. Like, originally the term was play to earn, right? And that spread like wildfire, right? But now the term is now kind of shifting to play and earn, which I think is better. It makes more sense, because we want to focus on the fun, because that's what games are supposed to do. It's supposed to bring you joy and fun and entertainment. And so that's first and foremost, and then the earn part is like a secondary factor, is how we view it.
Yeah, totally. And I'll do you another one. At Passage, we've been kind of coining a phrase, play to own, right? It's like the key is
100%.
like,
Love it.
it's like, I mean, shoot, I'm playing Elden Ring. I'm a dad. I've got 3 kids. I don't actually get to play video games that much, but I've gotten a little bit sucked into this one. And I don't earn anything, but if I own something in there, that would be cool. Like I don't need to earn anything. I'm not playing like the earning element. Even playing and earning is kind of irrelevant for me. It's like, but if I own something, right, if something in that belonged to me, that would be really special. No, but totally, I totally get what you're saying. I'd be curious, Phantasia, like, what's your experience in terms of just this process, right? I mean, because I think what Saga's trying to do at a big picture level, or I mean, what they are doing, what they're moving towards is that enabling people to create more opportunity, right? This kind of like easier access to block space allows people to build projects, right? So it's on the builder side of things, but this is something that allows you to deliver to more people, right? To bring this more mainstream. So I think this kind of theme of bridging the gap between the mainstream audience and what we're doing, obviously a lot of those are user experience issues, right? And solving some of the block space problems allows us to bridge that gap better. And I'd be curious I'm just ignorant, but on your background in building this, like where you've seen kind of unique opportunities to bring people into the Web3 elements, either from Web 2 or just educating people, like again, like bringing more people into the Web3 space.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple questions there, but I'll tackle the one of like bringing people in and where the challenges are. I think you guys both have hit it on the hit it really well, that it's a lot of education, and then a lot of people are frightened, intimidated by Web3 or blockchain or just really anything. Doing anything new really is just intimidating, especially if they have to pay money. So like the whole free aspect is awesome, that they can try to game, and making it as frictionless as possible. For example, what we do is we partner with Magic Link. So if you go to our website, you can join a free contest and you can connect your Phantom wallet or any other Solana wallet in that route. But for that to happen, you already have to have a Phantom wallet and you need to know about Solana and all this kind of stuff, right? But a normal fantasy sports user might not know that, and they don't want to go and download a Chrome extension or whatever it may be, right? So we partner with Magic Link, and you can sign up with your phone number, email, and that gives you and that creates a wallet, non-custodial, in a matter of seconds, which is super cool because users are used to that process. So it's not foreign to them, and just like making it seamless for them to enter the application, and then once they enter that with their phone number and email, creates a wallet. So cool, they're past that part. They don't even know it's on the blockchain. Maybe after that, we have free and paid contests. All contests and everything on the application, both mobile and web, we cover the transaction fees. On Solana, it's a fraction of a penny. So for customer acquisition costs, it's awesome. Like users don't have to go through that, and they can earn a little bit of our native token through playing these free contests. And from there, as they earn more and more, they can then, I think as Michael mentioned, like once they do want to cash out or whatever, maybe they can figure out how to use a wallet or figure out how to buy an NFT from a marketplace, that kind of stuff, or like tap up their wallet with some more currency.
Right. But waiting until there's something at stake, right? Waiting for there's something to gain, rather than like, hey, to even get started, you got to jump through this hoop.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not only competing against people in Web3, at least right now, the ecosystem's so nascent that if we were all to compete against everyone in Web3, we'd be competing against like 100,000 total users, which isn't good for any application like that. I mean, there's probably just as many people developing total as like there's probably, users that are attracted to certain games. So you have to compete for Web2 users, and for that to happen, that means you can't make it. You have to offer like incentives and make it better, which the blockchain inherently does. But you also have to make the process as seamless as those applications. And so we've been really focused on those processes. Magic Link's one. We're also integrating with some payment providers. People can onboard USDC very easily because just the concept. We've been doing we have about 15,000 users on our platform right now. We've been doing a lot of user interviews with normal users who find out of our app through word of mouth or friends or whatever. And a lot are confused about even just USDC. Like they're like, wow, this is a token. Is this volatile? Like we're all in crypto, and that makes sense, like stable-coin. But they hear coin, they're like, what is that? Like, is that going to go up and down in value if I enter this contest? Am I going to lose money even if I win?
Stable-coin, is that some type of horse coin? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, exactly. So just really making it simple for those users to understand. So maybe just like translating that to just like, $5 US, like just $5, like just $sign instead of USDC. And then for the crypto users that want to join that same contest, they can enter in USDC, whatever it is. So really having the design process and going through that thought process for both users and making sure that you're not segregating them on different parts of the platform, but they can enter in that same funnel and both of them still understand it, which that's hard, but we're definitely focusing on doing that. So that's one point.
And there's also this really unique in the user experience journey, unique opportunity. I think these tokens, these digital assets, can unify people too, right? Because you can take dollars, ETH, any currency that people want to put into the system and either convert it to like the platform currency, right? Which people recognize in the gaming space is like, oh, there's a point system here, right? I'm buying crystals or I'm buying whatever. Or it can turn into an NFT of some kind, right? People recognize, I'm getting a character, I'm getting a ticket, I'm getting, and so there's a way that we can kind of unify the language a bit. But I think you definitely got it right. It's about like not separating people on the inside, because honestly, these interoperable virtual currencies, as more and more bridges and interoperability is created, whether it's IBC, whether it's Wormhole, and this gives us the opportunity to unite people with the digital assets, right? But it's how do we get people in, right? It's bridging that gap on the front end. And people are used to things like log in with Facebook, log in with Google, right? It's like people don't see it as being like, a dividing element. It's just a preference, right? It's just a user experience preference. And so people have the opportunity to pick one or the other, right? So people should be able to log in with Kepler, log in with Phantom, log in with MetaMask, or log in with Facebook, right? And then once you're there, it's like you can fill in the gaps on the other side in terms of what the requirements are for each user experience. But I love that you guys are kind of creating that pathway, because those pathways in the door, right, to get people engaged and get people started. I mean, that's the exact same thing that we're trying to do with Passage, where it's like, you shouldn't have to download an app, right, to join an experience, right, to get involved, to get engaged. I can go on twitter.com and start engaging with the community right there. That's the user experience that people want for mass adoption. So no, defining those pathways is absolutely huge for sure.
Definitely. And then the other thing to mention, I know the conversation of like building, we've been seeing that there's a lot of demand from like Web2 incumbents to come into Web3, and everyone knows they need to get into it. They just don't have a good strategy yet, but they're looking into it. So for us, we're like a Web3 fantasy sports protocol and an application, but we're really open to other companies and builders coming and building on top of what we created, because as I said, there's 60 million people in North America that play fantasy sports. There's a lot of different types of fantasy sports games. Like we just covered it. We're doing the two most popular, but there's so many different permutations that you can do and that can be built and that already are built in the Web2 world. So just unlocking that kind of those Lego blocks at the bottom layer, and then having other people keep building on the protocol, connecting more UIs is super powerful for games as well. Not just like layer ones. I think that we're going to see that happen to a lot of games, at least from the demand that we've been seeing and having people come reach out to us. Like we've had multiple NFT projects, multiple Web2 companies like, hey, like we would love to make our own UI for our own community that they can engage in fantasy sports. Yeah. So I think we're going to see that for a lot of games.
Well, absolutely. I think that's huge. I think, again, this is a big reason why we're here, kind of under the Saga conversation, right, is infrastructure, right? It's like chicken or the egg type scenario, right? It's tough. Like, do you get the people first? How do you create the demand for the infrastructure you're trying to build before you have the infrastructure, right? And then there's three layers to that, right? There's the builders building for consumers, right? And so there's a lot of moving parts. But I mean, this is kind of, it was interesting even thinking about when Michael was talking about how you guys were talking about your project as an internal solution first. I mean, that reminds me of the Amazon model, right? Where it's like they were building something that they wanted to use first and foremost, and then leveraging that to create infrastructure that can serve other communities, right?
Exactly. And yeah, like our approach was go to where the users are, and where are the users? Most users are Web2 users, that was our, like, and try, obviously, both of you guys were talking about it, like try to make the experience as seamless as possible. That's another tenet of ours. As it is right now, I don't think the technology is quite there yet to make it as seamless as what people are used to in Web2. Obviously, we'll get there. I'm sure our Web3, all of our folks put together and combined, we'll figure out ways to get there. It's just right now there isn't a way, but at least try to make it a way that it's, that makes it as seamless as possible. Meaning, and what does that mean for us? That means, okay, you're playing a Web2 game, or so you thought, a free-to-play game, but then you're ultimately getting to a certain level and then accruing something, and so then now you realize, oh, okay, now, like, it's basically a Trojan horse for the Web2 people to get into Web3. Is how we see it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what it's going to have to be, right? They're going to have to be some element of, kind of like using Web2 mechanics to bridge people into Web3, right? It's like there's going to have to be some element of compromise along the way. to help people get into the space and to give us an opportunity to build to the point where, Web3 is its own thing, right? Where the wallet becomes a standard identity experience, right? Like it's going to take time, right? All of this is going to take time. There's going to be compromises along the way. The biggest thing in my mind is always making sure the compromise is not on ownership, right? You need to always give people the opportunity to own their assets, right? So it's like, okay, if they come in and you've got some type of managed or custodial wallet solution or something like that, then it becomes an education process showing them how they can host these themselves in a self-hosted wallet or in a cold wallet or whatever, like, right, teaching people. And like Michael said, part of it is like getting them to a point where they see these things they're accruing and realize, oh, there's a dollar value associated with this asset that I've been gaining, right? And it's like, I can legit trade this for like, so many dollars, right? Or these other in-game things, right? It's like showing people the value. And I think that's
exactly.
Really...
It's like what you said, there's an actual value to it that's on that people can see, but also like, oh, but I can also use this special currency and get something and mint an NFT with it that then now I own, and then it goes back to that ownership model, right? So 100%.
And I think it's a lot of it comes back down to, it's not kind of what Lex said. It's like, I don't care that this like item or whatever is like worth hundreds of dollars. That's not what interests me, in my opinion, when I'm playing a game. It's more like, hey, look at this badge of honor I have for like getting this item, right? And kind of the bragging rights associated with that, and being able to like showcase that as an NFT or ownership of some asset in the game is always like really nice. Because in the past, with games, it always has been like, oh, you can, like I remember the first entry into this kind of like economy markets that I was like back in like Diablo 2 eras, where they were like trading items, and so they're like super rare items that you can have it, but the only people who can see that item is like people when I put it on a trading screen, right? Whereas if I could like bring that asset into some place that I can say, hey, look at this badge that I have, and everyone can kind of like really rally around that. That's the kind of stuff that I think is
so Jen, like what you're talking about is something actually our company is really thinking deeply about, and it's because we have IP that spans across several games, right? And so the hot topic, that anyone will talk about right now is like interoperability, right? And that's kind of a buzzword these days, but truly, like in a gaming sense, like it kind of makes sense. Like let's say you do have something that where you can show as like a badge of honor, like it'd be great to showcase that in the different games that you play, that's with all the IP that's spread around, right? And so there are real life use cases to it, and yeah, we are definitely looking into that, and I think it'll basically push the envelope further along for gaming.
Yeah, and the other key to that too is, what do you own, right? What is it that you own? Because the difficulty in some infrastructures, and again, this is going to be a process, right? This isn't going to happen overnight, but the difficulties are right now, a lot of what you own is really just a permission to information or infrastructure within a centralized system, right? I own the access to use this avatar that is stored in this centralized database on an Amazon server, right? And so the difficulty there is, okay, cool, I own the NFT, which gives me the right to this asset in a game, or this item, right? Or to this character experience, whatever. But if the game stops or goes down, well, you still own the NFT, but now there's nothing you can do with it, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, for us, this is why the partnership with Akash Network is so important, was decentralized cloud gives us the ability to, for anybody who's in the call, reach out to me and I will personally bring you into the Passage virtual experience, because you just have to see it. But basically, it's a 3D experience, right? And the difficulty there is, in Passage Marketplace, we're giving people access to 3D assets, 3D avatars, 3D characters, tickets to 3D experiences. But then again, you run into that same question, like, okay, is this just a 3D asset hosted on an Amazon server that, again, if the game goes down, if it loses popularity, I'm stuck, right? And basically the way we're building it is so that this can be hosted in a decentralized way, right? Which gives kind of this immutability to it. But also putting that 3D information in a decentralized server allows us to, for one, make that interoperable across different, that same asset can be used in other Passage worlds, other experiences, right? That could be used in a, theoretically, you could come to a Passage virtual event or a Passage game with your Come To Us character, right? Your C2X character from that game, right? You have one asset in one, and you go and attend as your avatar in another, because it's not in one ecosystem or the other. It's stored in a decentralized way. Ownership is decentralized. And that's where we're going, right? That's the future. But like you said, Michael, like that's going to be a process, right? And again, it's bridging the ecosystems, it's bridging the, but again, it's also creating demand for the decentralized compute, right? So that infrastructure can be competitive with an Amazon, with an Azure, things like that. So it's certainly a big journey, but again, it's keeping in mind and making sure the compromises we're making along the way are not compromises to ownership. And we're always giving people that opportunity to take greater ownership if they invest more time, right? Maybe you've got to figure out how to store a seed phrase. Maybe you got to figure out this, that, and the other. But giving people access to ownership is, I think, really the most important part as we are bridging the gap and moving further into the Web3 space.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much, Lex. And I mean, thanks so much for gathering everyone for this conversation. I mean, we've just really enjoyed listening to all of you and just hearing your incredible rich trove of experiences, having built in this space and continuing to build in the space and interact with the gaming community and see what it is they want from Web3. And we continue to hear themes about ownership, about making it as smooth as possible for gamers to get into Web3, and maybe they don't even notice that there is a blockchain component to what it is they're playing or what it is they're building until much, much later down the line when they're savvy enough at that point to really actively participate. And it is one of those things where at Saga, we've had the experience early on of seeing, Web 2 or in the DeFi space, more quote unquote traditional financial services coming into Web 3 and crypto and trying to basically sort of apply what they had been doing into a completely new kind of infrastructure. And I think what they discovered along that journey is you can do that, but if you are open to adjusting your mindset a bit or adding to your mindset and thinking about collective ownership, for instance, of gamers, which really enriches your community, then you're not just replicating the experiences or the gaming models that everyone has already been building or that everyone's already familiar with. You're really opening up a whole new world of experiences, and there'll be new gaming models, new business models, and all of that requires infrastructure to really keep up with it. So at Saga, that's a lot of our objective, is to make sure that game developers have everything they need in order to build whatever game comes to their imagination, and not to be hampered things like limited block space throughput issues, congestion, performance issues, high and variable gas fees. Those are all ailments that are particular to Web3 that we think can be vastly improved upon. And ultimately, it'll just allow the space to grow and bring people more happiness. So with that, we only have a few minutes left in this Twitter space, and we always want to leave an opportunity for the audience to come on stage and ask any questions. So if anyone has questions for the Saga team or for any of our wonderful co-hosts today, please come forward.
Cool. I will look out for someone requesting. I haven't seen anything yet. I guess in the meantime, I could bring up one of the questions I had prepared. So in everyone's point of view, where does multi-chain fit into this Web3 gaming future? And if it even makes sense to think about games interacting with a single chain at this point? And then a second part to that is, how much of these gaming experiences need to be on-chain versus staying on a local device or just compute in the cloud and not interacting with a blockchain at all? That seems key to optimizing the user experience in my mind. But I'd love to hear what everyone has to think about that while we wait for someone in the audience.
Yeah, I'd say a big part of that is kind of like what we talked about. It's like just being mindful about the compromises, and making sure that we're best leveraging the user experience, right? It's like, minimum using the blockchain that you have, whether it's Solana, whether it's Cosmos, Terra, in a way that's going to create a good user experience may mean different things for different applications, right? Like, does every single game state need to be on the chain, right? Is that good for privacy, right? Or do just kind of basic ownership transactions need to be on the blockchain, right? What does that type of thing look like? And that's going to vary from experience to experience. Then, in terms of the interchain question, I mean, I think we'd all probably agree, coming from even different chains. Like, we're building on the Cosmos SDK using Rust smart contracts, but we just hired a Rust smart contract developer who's from the Solana ecosystem, right? So it's one of those things where, like, the synergies are already just like blatantly obvious, and obviously coming from the Cosmos IBC world, where I've been living for the last 6 months, developing around this concept of being able to move assets and ownership seamlessly across different chains, using IBC. So we've been a little bit spoiled to that kind of being like the default. I'd definitely be curious to hear from Michael and Phantasia in terms of your experience and kind of like what you like about the interchain experiences that you've run into. Like maybe like Michael, if you want to even speak to like, do you have expectations in terms of enabling cross-chain stuff? Like, is that something that's
So yeah, it's funny you mentioned. So C2X is actually built on Terra right now. We're not exclusive to Terra. We're obviously thinking multi-chain in the future because that's what like there are so many chains and so many great technologies coming out. Like I will say, like we at this point we really just don't know what we don't know, but we know that's something we need to start looking at. And in terms of for the user, like on the blockchain side of things, same with what you said. Like at least for the games that we have out now, the ownership transaction and the minting of the items is like what we have on the blockchain. Not every single transaction or like exchange, I don't think needs to be on chain, right? Or else it'll just
I agree.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's again compromises to make for a good user experience, right? There's
Correct,
no point being overly thorough when it's actually not going to be a good user experience.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, there seems to be a definite trade-off there. Like looking at when I see your game, Lex, I think of something like World of Warcraft or something, for example, where like every time that you mine some iron, does that
Right.
need to be sent to the blockchain and updated on the global
all
state?
The poor folks with cold wallets, right? Where you got to connect that thing
exactly. Yeah.
Pray to God you're not mobile at the time.
I'm just thinking of like the horrific user experience. Like, okay, I want to like mine some iron. Let me break out my ledger. Like, it sounds.
Everyone is multi-sigs too, even single sigs.
That truly would be proof of work, because the work you'd have to do proving all those transactions,
right.
I can just see the furious tapping of that right button on the ledger trying to get to the confirm.
Yes, I think there's this fine balance that you need to find. And I think the key word that you keep saying is ownership, Lex, and that does seem to be key. Like, what are the things that are most important for you to own? Like, let's say in this World of Warcraft example, is it important for you to like make sure on the global state everyone in the world knows that you own one more piece of iron? Probably not. But if you have some like badass dragon shield that you had to like go through a dungeon for 3 hours with your friends, like I would sure hope that is something that it's a little more higher importance to be have clear ownership of.
I think absolutely. One thing we talk a lot about, like, in-game assets and putting it on the blockchain, but one thing that I think is a huge opportunity that is more of the community side of things. So like, in World of Warcraft, like guilds, were really the central part of the game and why it was so successful, because you had like a little family of people in the game that you could get on. And so, at the end of the day, a DAO and a guild in World of Warcraft really isn't different in the fact. And the really interesting thing about multi-chain blockchains and many games using the same platform is then you can actually have guilds that span across multiple games, and like your community members in one can interact with the same community in a different game, and having that community aspect of it in games, I think is really interesting, and I'm really excited to see the future of that with blockchain.
Yeah, community is the word that comes to my head as well, and it does seem that community just seems to emerge and percolate from every corner of crypto. Like it's this natural thing. Too. It's like this thing with like ownership and being proud of like, and the NFTs showing unique part of a guild or whatever. It all just comes back to community and humans wanting to like be a part of something bigger than themselves, and it just emerges everywhere. Cool. I still haven't got anything else from the audience.
We're just too thorough.
Definitely. And actually, I got to run too, so I really appreciate it. I wanted to say goodbye. So thanks for having me on. This has been awesome. Absolutely. Thanks to all the co-hosts. Really, really exciting stuff. Especially cool to see that we're all from different chains and completely different games, but talking about a lot of the same problems and solving the same problems. So really excited. Like this has got me excited about the future and going to check out everyone's project. And best of luck to everyone building. And yeah, thanks for hosting again, Saga.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan. It was so good to have you. Thanks so much.
Yep. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.
Cool. Well,
yeah, same. Great speaking to everyone, and thank you so much, Saga, Rebecca, Jen, for having me on, and would love to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. So Michael, I mean, come to us and C2X they've provided mobile games that we've all played. I mean, even if we're not aware that, that the games emerged from your particular studio or company, we've all played them. So your impact on the space has been enormous, and taking such a huge bet on Web3 speaks volumes for our space, that it is such a big opportunity, but it more so speaks to your conviction and how you guys see the future and go for it. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you again. Yeah, I do want to reiterate, like, our whole company has pivoted over. That's it's not easy to move 2,000 people over to Web3, and so I'm actually very, very proud of that for our company to make that change, and hopefully we're leaders in this space, and we can impart a lot of good wisdom and insights to the rest of the people joining up on Web3.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Michael. And
Thank you,
Lex,
guys.
our OG at Passage, creating worlds and just opening up so many insights and information for the benefit of all of us today. I mean, I think, this has been a great opportunity for a bunch of people who are actively building in the space to learn from one another and hear things that even maybe they haven't necessarily talked about or thought about. But certainly for our audience, I'm sure they've learned a ton. Lex, your leadership in the space is amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Well, it looks like we'll probably wrap it up here then. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Had a pretty good turnout at some point. So, yeah, we appreciate everyone here. And hope you have a good rest of your night, day around the world.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye.